Hi everyone, I'm going to be speaking about badminton conditioning in this lecture, and let's hope we make the most out of this, okay, so that when this whole thing is over with the lecture, you can design and yourself train badminton players with better conditioning programs which can be applicable in the real world. So this slide just gives a bit of info about me, what I do and where I have studied, so you can go through that. If you want further info about me, you can just look at my website, which is put at the bottom with my name. And I think, yeah, let's just start into it so you guys get to learn and I also get to maybe learn twice. So now starting with the objectives, okay, what is it that we want to get out of this lecture? What is it that we want to really, when it's done, be clear about? So the first objective of this lecture is to make sure that you understand the physical and physiological demands of badminton. What is it that is required for a badminton player? And because this whole course which is there is about conditioning program design, you first need to know what is it that you're going to condition. So the first point will be that, and we'll be going through, as we go through the lectures, you'll get to know what we are doing. But the first thing always with any sport is to understand that you have to know what's the physical demand. What is done from an energy perspective, from the muscles contraction perspective, and even from the planes of movement. And that really is what separates different sports, whether it's badminton, whether it's tennis, whether it's boxing, whether it's shot put. These all sports get separated with each other, especially from our perspective as conditioning coaches, with the energy systems, with the muscular adaptation, and that's what we come in, right? We come in to improve those movements. So this is what we'll try to first understand. Second, we'll be learning to apply the appropriate principles of endurance, stability, strength, power. Now, those who have done the course which I have taught earlier, the online one, which is strength and conditioning for the Indian population, if you haven't done it, I would strongly suggest do that, because that will give you the basics of what is strength and conditioning and exactly where you fit in and what is required to be applied. So once you do that, and in general anyways across the world, the standard of teaching for strength and conditioning is always stability, strength, power. Endurance is added with the stability. So we'll look at how we can sort of put these principles into action with badminton. Okay, so first we have to understand, just to give you a quick sort of recap, without endurance, okay, muscular endurance or even cardiovascular endurance, you can't really move to cardiovascular power or even to muscular strength. To do that, you have to go through this first. Okay, that's the safest way for your joints, for your connective tissue, for your systems inside, whether it's your nervous system, whether it's your muscular system, to be able to get to a certain point where they can produce more. So this becomes very important. The more you can read up, the better it will be. So at the end, I have given you some references. I would suggest read those books if you can, or even otherwise just type in, nowadays with ChatGPT and with YouTube, there's so much info out there. It shouldn't be too difficult. But strongly advise that for any sport, understand where stability and endurance fit in, and then comes strength, and then comes power. Understand exactly what this is and how you can manipulate that. Because no matter how many courses you do, no matter how many universities you attend and do your degrees, your masters, your PhDs, the basics never change. So whether it's badminton or any sport, this is going to be the repetitive thing that you'll keep seeing. So as I later go on, I will teach you exactly how you can do a program like this, which I have in the past done for elite players, and you'll also get programs which I have used and which other coaches have also used, and something that works. Okay, so it's like an easy fix menu that you get. But if you can understand that, then you'll be able to create as well, and you'll understand what's going on, right? So this is the second objective of this whole the part we are doing on badminton. Now comes the third one, Again, I would suggest go through the previous strength and conditioning lecture, a separate course which I have done. It will really then make sense to do anything with conditioning, with training. You'll always understand where you fit in, because that's like the ABC. This is like the next letters. So you will learn here how to select progression. Like if you are doing an X amount of weight, or if you are running an X distance with your athletes, how do you progress? Do you just come one day and say that, okay, today we're all going to train hard? Is that what we're going to do? Or are we going to look at, a certain amount of load which can be increased? And this again forms the basics and the bases, okay? If that is not done, everything sort of, falls apart. So we'll learn about progression, we'll learn the right training method, the volume, and other fitness variables, that are required within the training block. And without this, I keep saying, everything falls apart. It's like if you want to speak in any language, you first have to understand the letters, the alphabets. Then you learn to make the sentences, and then you learn to converse. So same goes with strength and conditioning. A lot of people, whether it's coaches, whether it's trainers, physiotherapists who want to get into conditioning, make this mistake of looking at workouts. Okay, they'll just type into maybe YouTube and say badminton workout, and then they want to just mimic those and use those with their players. Sometimes the most coolest looking ones, the ones which has a lot of fancy music behind, a lot of effects, people think that's great. Sometimes it might even be one of your favorite players who says, this is what I do. Is that person qualified to really speak, no matter how good a player they are? So these are things you will get to know if you know your basics. Otherwise, it always becomes a case of copying. So make sure that you understand these concepts. If you've not done, strongly recommended, do the course previously, because it will really, really help you. And then you'll be able to create programs yourself and know exactly what works, what doesn't. And lastly, in these objectives, we want to create a conditioning based program which is evidence based, where sort of you have a program that can be done for your players. If you are working with a team, a badminton team, or in an academy, you should be able to know what to do. I'm going to, at the end, just to give you a sneak peek, I'm going to highlight, or rather share the workout, the training program that I had done with the player. If you follow badminton, you'll know him. His name is Lakshya Sen, and the program I'm sharing is what I had done with him when he got selected for the Olympics. His ranking was pretty low in 2024, 2023. We worked with a specific model. And then in 2024, he played the All England and the French Open, and he really played very well. And if you want to, you can look at his matches. So I've also put a small clip of it where you will see the movement patterns. But just to know what these elite players do and what is done, I will show you that, but make sure you understand what it is. Just don't copy it thinking that, no, oh, this is what Lakshya Sen does, so I'm also going to do the same, and that's it. If you understand, you'll get a lot better ideas. So I'm going to now show you a clip next in which he plays, and you can just look at the movements. It's in slow motion, and you'll understand what are the movements that are required in badminton. So this is the player I'm talking about. And one of the things you'll see now as he serves, you can just look at the weight bearing in badminton. So it is right foot which is being loaded for the person who's in white. That's Lakshya Sen. He's going to serve. So he serves, and then look at the movement pattern. He thinks it's going back, then front, then again steadies himself, goes forward. So you'll notice there's a lot of acceleration and deceleration, lunging. Now it comes high, now a vertical jump, full powered smash, again going forward and stopping with a lunge, and then hitting again. Okay, so I'm just going to play this once more for everyone, so it becomes easy for us to know what's going on. So just look at that so you get an idea, because if you don't understand the game and if you don't watch the patterns of movement, it won't fall into place. So look at only the player in the white, look at his footwork, forget the other person for this time, and just look at how the movement patterns in badminton are. There's no running, there's like how on track people run. So that will again give us an idea of how important is sprinting. Is it really important, or does it matter? Do they ever sprint in badminton? Or is it accelerate, decelerate? So again, look at it: wide stance, short lunge, now deep lunge, again back, comes high, sets himself, vertical jump, full powered. This is the most powerful stroke. Okay, and again pushes out. So this gives you an idea exactly what happens. So when we look at the needs analysis of badminton, what is required? We have to understand that predominantly it's an anaerobic alactic system for short rallies. Okay, so these are short rallies which go, a rally is what two players obviously do for an X period of time. So those go anywhere between 10 seconds. Sometimes, with very long rallies, it's around 1 minute, can go a bit higher than that. But truly speaking, what our role is to prepare them for those long rallies. If you can only sort of prepare a player for short rallies, and the day when it really comes to it, when they have to play long rallies and long matches, this is where a lot of conditioning programs fail, because almost anybody can play one game in badminton, 2 games. What if it goes to 3 games? And then your next match is also 3. So that's where really a good planning, good conditioning comes in. So the energy system is anaerobic predominantly. There's of course aerobic system required as a base to help them recover between rallies, between games. The movement profile, as we saw in that video, is explosive jumps. So explosive jumps, when we look at it, we are talking about the smash. The smash is when a person goes up in the air, hits the most powerful stroke that he can in badminton with full rotation in the torso, shoulder going into internal rotation, a lot of pec use, a lot of latissimus dorsi, your internal rotators, and at the end your wrist snaps and gives that sting. So the most powerful movement in badminton is the smash. In tennis, it will be the serve. Okay, and both of them come from top. So why is it that a person has to have explosiveness to jump? What is the advantage? What if they can't jump? Okay, just to give an example for maybe someone who doesn't know the sport or doesn't follow. The higher you jump, the more steeper goes the direction of the shuttle. So that's why very tall players have this advantage. When they jump up in the air, they don't need to jump too much, but if they can, then the angle goes very steep and it becomes very hard for the opposite side opponent to lift it. So the higher one can go, it's it's always an advantage. The higher and the faster. So it's vertical and horizontal distance. If you can go there fast in this as well and this, it will always help. Vertical definitely for a smash, okay, to go through. So that is the reason why the explosive jumps are important. But is that all that we need to train? Nope. Something else that comes in is your lunges. So when you do lunges, okay, front to the side, and when you see players like when you saw Lakshya's match there, the lunge near the net is where a lot of players get their groin tears, a lot of groin strains, because this lunging is not very common in many sports. So you will notice that in tennis, it is not as low. They do lunge laterally and then play a forehand and even backhand. So there is a lunge, but it is not as, the angle is not as wide. In badminton, you will see players really stretch out and then they have to again recover and go back and maybe jump up in the air, again go to the other side. So this is the reason why lunges also become a very prominent part of badminton training. If somebody only does squats with both legs together as a bilateral movement, that's good, no problem with that. But lunges also are important. Sprints. So in training, doing sprints which are multi-directional, where they can sort of go in different directions. This is what comes out in most books and most papers about training. But for you to understand that sprints, as you saw in the badminton match, and you can watch other matches also to look at a player's movement sort of pattern, you will notice they don't really run where one leg leads, then the other and so on. Badminton movements are most of the time with the dominant foot forward. So if I'm a right-handed player, my right side will be in front. I'll play that near the net if it's a forehand side. If it's a backhand also, it will be my right. A lot of, when I was new as well, and many physios, many trainers think that is the, you go right here and you go left here, because that's how we train in the gym, right? If you do your right leg, then you follow with the left. But badminton is not. There's one leg which leads, is the right in the forehand, in the front, backhand in the front. At the baseline as well, it's right where it is loaded. Only on this side, if it is an overhead toss, then they will go and land with their left and put all the weight on that and then hit a shot. Sometimes even that, depending on the player, they might go and place their right foot and play a backhand clear. So these movements, it took me time also to understand. I don't play badminton. I'm not a great player. I've played as a kid, but I'm not a master of badminton. But I need to know the movements. So then I know what needs to be added. I need to know which is the part that the player wants to improve in. So that's why it's important to look at not just badminton, any sport you look at, make sure that you look at the patterns of one player. When you're watching a match, just look at the player's movements, and in an ideal world, like what I did with the video, take the commentary out. Because when the commentary is there, there's a lot of emotions, there's a lot of voice modulation, and it changes how we perceive that video. So take the commentary out, just look at a person's movement. If you can even cut off the video to look at only your player's movement, you'll know exactly what needs to be done. So even when you do your assessment of players in any sport, you can just look at the pattern and then understand what needs to be done. Because when they're playing against somebody else, we sometimes get caught looking at the shuttle. We might think it's a brilliant point that the person got, but did the player jump as high to smash, or did they couldn't jump maybe and they still got a point? And if that's the case, then the conditioning program is not great, because the person is not able to jump. And this again, I would suggest do the previous course so you will know what's the difference between winning and preparing right. Our role is to prepare a player. Our role is not to do winning. We're not responsible for winning. Winning happens because of the player. But if you understand all this, then you'll know exactly how to specialize, how to take all the distractions out and do exactly what you're paid for, do exactly what you're supposed to do, and benefit the player. So understanding these movement patterns are important. That's why I've explained. Sprints, whether they are important or not, that's why is something you'll have to look at. And is there a variation for those sprints? I will show you something regarding that. Now, known versus unknown. So what is known versus unknown? Is basically movement patterns which are known versus unknown. So in a sport like badminton, the movements are unknown, meaning if I'm playing against an opponent, I don't know where the shuttle will come next. And this also happens in tennis. You don't know where the ball is going to come next. Just the difference between tennis and badminton will be that it's much faster in badminton, because it's a very fast speed of the shuttles. So it comes very fast and you don't get as much time to react to an unknown movement. Now, which are known movements in sport? Known movements are sports such as shot put, javelin throw, you can say even gymnastics to an extent, because you, the athlete, is in control of what you will be doing. It's fixed. Swimming, again, athletics, majority of them. Unknown movements happen in sports like maybe even cricket, because you don't know. Football, okay, you don't know there's an opponent and what they will do. So sports which have an opponent generally will have unknown movements. Sports which don't have an opponent right exactly in front of you countering you, those sports will have known movements, meaning you exactly know what you have to do, you just have to do it faster. So a sprinter who's running a 100 meters race knows exactly what, nobody can stop him from giving his best performance. So this part you have to understand, that badminton has unknown drills, and because of these unknown drills, we will come to this a bit later, but that's where stopping and changing direction is something that one should be focusing on. It is not just concentric actions of muscles, there's a lot of eccentric and there's a lot of isometric as well. So that's why it's unknown, and this we have to understand. And the one more point that comes in is, it is one side dominant. Like many sports which are there one side dominant, some are bilateral. So swimming, you use both arms. Athletics, you use both arms. Badminton, you use one side. and it's not just one side, it is also one side with an implement. And this is again something which is taught in the first course. So you should know that sports where the implement is in your hand is what matters. You can move fast as much as you can, but if you can't finish that rally because the shuttle is late to contact the racket, you're losing time. So this is something you have to also understand, that getting a badminton program is also at the end about getting the shuttle to connect with the racket faster, or rather the racket to connect with the shuttle faster. And there are things which are done for that. Maybe it's too short to address that, but yeah, there are things which when I train, I do this with elite players. And there's a lot. I mean, we can't really cover everything in this, but I'm going to give you guys an idea about what you can do immediately, like when you go and if you're going to work with badminton players, quickly what you can do so that they learn to do things faster. Now, work rest, one side dominant, okay, so just to go back to one side dominant, understand they play with this arm, okay, if it's a right-handed guy, if it's a left-handed girl or guy, they play with the left. Does it mean that the other side is not being used? Now, this is something you need to keep in mind, that if I'm playing with my right side, the left side is used for stabilization. This is extremely important. It does not mean that the left is useless and is just sort of hanging there. Okay, you can't play keeping your hand behind and hit a smash. So when you see players, always look at the right, the dominant arm, also look at the non-playing arm, and you'll notice that the non-playing arm always makes, the role of it is to balance. If somebody is playing a tennis shot, you'll notice this hand comes here. If it's a badminton smash, they go out. Okay. The reason why that is done is because this hand stabilizes, this hand produces the power with rotation, your core, your whole body, it's like that coil, uncoil move. But this is not a useless arm, this is not something which is just out there, nothing to do, and we are only right-handed players. Your left plays a huge role for stabilization. How do you create programs for that? You can do, this is something you can learn over time and maybe even create good programs yourself. Now looking at the work-rest ratio. Now in the work-rest ratio, the playing that happens normally in this, I've taken this off the references, but it says somewhere around 10 to 12 second work and 40 to 60 second recovery, which is correct. So once a rally is done, there's a bit of a rest, but those rallies can go longer too, 30 seconds. So if it's a 30-second rally, it is obviously something we need to train for that person to go on for 30 seconds. So 10 to 12 is those easy ones, but 30 and onwards is where we are really looking at our role coming in. Now what is it that you need to keep in mind, the key components of badminton? So if you look at the bottom point, leg acceleration, which is just explosiveness, so that in any position, whether you're going vertical for a smash, whether you're going to the net fast, accelerate, boom, you should be able to get from point A to point B as fast as possible. Now, can one just focus on sprints or movements where you just explode out and rush, and is that good enough? This is a question you have to ask yourself, because it's obviously not in badminton. We are not doing athletic sprinting where you hear the gun go, somebody says, take your mark, get set, go, or you hear the gun and people run. Badminton is not that. You don't run through the net. You need to explode and stop at a very short distance. And this really makes the sport so much harder, and the strain on the joints also so much more. So if you can understand this part of acceleration and understanding deceleration as well, it will really help you create programs which are effective. In fact, if there's a secret one could say, then it's deceleration. But then when to put deceleration also matters, because deceleration training is great, doesn't mean tomorrow every new person who comes to you, someone without experience, you start making them do all these holds. You will end up giving them injuries because their systems are not used to it. So again, there's a pattern where you first train the concentric, then you move on to isometric, then you move on to eccentric. And this is something you'll have to get used to learning, reading, okay? But deceleration is extremely important. We can't just deny how important it is. Now when somebody explodes in badminton, they have to then decelerate and then they have to stabilize, because obviously even after deceleration they need to be able to stop and stabilize. They can't just keep moving, slowing down. After slowing down, stabilize and then change direction. So this makes it even harder. It's not just front back movement like fast, stop, go back. No, it's fast, slow down, stop, now change. Which side we don't know. That's where the unknown drills come in. So this is something we need to understand as well when we design programs. Lactate tolerance. Now these are something which coaches use to describe, and it's called acid rallies. Now acid rallies are these lactic acid rallies where they just play these long rallies, during matches sometimes, and your legs will just burn like crazy because the lactic acid just starts building up. You play initially first 5 seconds, no problem, 20, 30, 40, it's kicking in, and now your legs start feeling heavy and you're moving on, and then 42, 43, 44, it just builds up. And then you start seeing players going slower. Okay, they are not as fast, and it's because the lactic acid is building up and they are not able to sustain it maybe. Now if you can train them to have good endurance and to tolerate that lactic acid, that is where you can play a role to maybe make them extend 10 seconds more. And this is when advantage can be when it's a long rally, where your player can just last and the other person starts slowing down. So this is why understanding how the whole process works and how to create programs is so important. Okay. So lactate tolerance is one of the key components. If you can teach your players to just be able to tolerate more lactic acid as they are playing, it will make a difference without a doubt for majority of players. Vertical power for jump smashes. Now this is again something else that's needed. Okay, you need to be able to jump. The higher you can jump, the better. So any person that you're training, if they have a vertical height of an X amount of inches, you need to be able to improve that, because even those 2 inches can make a difference in the degree of the smash, like I explained earlier. So this is again one more rule. So if we know all this, then we can create programs for that. Shoulder power for smashes. The most powerful upper body movement in badminton is a full powered smash, which is a vertical jump smash. And these are those, normally these are finishers, where people try to finish. In fact, in that rally, if you noticed earlier, he jumps up, hits a very hard smash, the person can't take it, does a weak return, this guy goes forward and tries, and then the opponent just puts it out. So a jump smash, if you can improve the vertical height, and if you can improve their shoulder power to hit, along with of course everything, because it's not just your shoulder that hits, everything. But if your shoulder is strong, it will not get busted, meaning it won't get injured, because a lot of injuries, common injuries in badminton are shoulder injuries. So shoulder power is something very important. And note, I have said shoulder power, I have not said shoulder endurance and only shoulder strength. These two are important, but you have to at some stage get to shoulder power from these two. Anaerobic capacity. So your cardiovascular endurance, to the point where it's anaerobic, where you're just out there, there's not enough oxygen and you're still going on. That's basically what you need. You also need aerobic recovery. Basically you need aerobic conditioning. And again, if somebody who's watching this first time, if you're a player, go through other lectures of physiology, so you know what's anaerobic, what's aerobic. Aerobic recovery, something I'll give a tip here. Many coaches, many players, many physios focus a lot on this, because for them, it becomes like aerobic capacity is everything. So they start with a lot of these runs, okay, long runs, and they think, okay, that's how you build stamina. And the mistake maybe that happens is they focus too much on aerobic capacity. So aerobic capacity can be built, by doing these long runs. You could be doing 30-minute runs, and you just love to go on, maybe 45 minutes as well with your players. Now, this is a question I'll ask, okay, to any coach. Does a rally go for 30 minutes or 45 minutes? Obviously, the answer is no. Does any sort of, movement in badminton go for that long, and especially at a slow pace? Because if you're going to do 30 minutes of runs, you are definitely not doing 30 minutes at a high pace. It will be at a moderate pace. So in badminton, it is not slow running that happens. It's a lot of fast movements, and it happens in stop-start sequence. So long distance running, is it effective? It is effective for recovery. Okay, it can be done, it should be done when a person is new, for a beginner, to build up that base. But once you are at an elite level, you have to also understand that this player will also be playing badminton as a sport, which itself is very taxing. Their heart rate is very high when they play, even in practice. And if they're doing even general practice, the heart rate is used to movements for long. They'll play maybe an hour, 2 hours. Elite players will play up to 3 hours. So there's a lot of general aerobic conditioning that they get with badminton itself. This, I think we have to remember, this is what a lot of coaches forget, and they just focus too much on the aerobic side. And they try to focus on doing these long runs, and long runs are easy, right? So people get a whole group and do. And then they think, why is my player not able to last in these rallies which happen, these short rallies which are intense, and why is my player getting tired though we make them train so hard? Because you're doing something which is like, you want to race with a Ferrari at a speed of 200 and maybe 20 kilometers, but you are practicing driving your car at 60 kilometer speed, but for maybe 300 kilometers going on long drives, but at 60 speed. That won't help that Ferrari to reach those speeds and control at that speed. So you have to put people in situations which they will be in matches, not just fitness drills, which for them it's nothing, it's easy. So aerobic capacity is important, but don't go too much into it, because that's something which a lot of badminton players, most sports people have that. You can do that on the side, nothing wrong with it, but don't let that be maybe 10 to 20% of the training. Anaerobic work is what makes the difference. When two people are on court, both of them will have good aerobic capacity at a low level, but it's anaerobic conditioning that will make the difference in badminton. So remember that point, that's an important one that I've told you.